crucial concept here, sentences involving contrast in meaning. Look at this very simple example. You have two answer choices, only one of them is correct. This word despite here suggests a contrast in meaning. So, despite growing up in a wealthy household, Sarah is something opposite of what she is expected to be. She grew up in a wealthy household. She is expected to be extravagant. The meaning is that she is not extravagant, she is frugal, which means economical. Contrast suggests a shift in meaning, a crucial concept because more than half the sentences on GRE's sentence equivalence and text completion questions feature contrast. Contrast reverses the broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Look at this example. You see, Rose did not study much for the test, and therefore she is likely to perform badly. However, because of this contrast here, although our expectation from the correct answer choice for this blank is going to be just the opposite. The expectation is going to be something on the lines of well, that although she did not study much, she performed well. Let's take one more example. Jack performed well in the league stage, so this is a contrast trigger. However, he something in the knockout stage. So because of this contrast trigger, however, here we expect something opposite of performing well. So our broad expectation from the correct answer choice here is something on the lines of failed, that Jack performed well in the league stage of the tournament. However, he failed in the knockout stage. Let's look at some of the most common contrast triggers. So simple words such as but, yet, however, some more simple but very common ones, some more contrast triggers, some more here, some more. All these words suggest a likely shift in meaning. Very often the use of present perfect tense, which means a helping verb such as has or have, together with a verb suggests a shift in meaning on the lines that something has happened, therefore something else, a shift of sorts. And most interesting of all contrast triggers is one of the most simple words in English language, the word no and all its variations. Please understand, the list of these contrast triggers are not something that you need to remember. These are just for your conceptual understanding. The list can be endless. You don't have to remember it. The idea is simply that whenever you see such a contrast trigger, expect a shift in meaning. Beware of no or not in a sentence. Remember, no reverses the expected following word. For example, Tim is healthy. However, if we add a not in the sentence, you see the expected following word here has changed from healthy to something quite the opposite. Opposite of healthy, sick. Some common variations: no, not, neither, nor, never, without, rarely, barely, hardly. Once again, you don't have to remember the list. It is only for your conceptual understanding. However, an important one here that I suggest that you remember is anything but. This is GRE's favorite. A note on the usage of anything but. Anything but simply means not at all, or simply not. Hence, you can simply replace the phrase anything but with not. Let's take an example here. He is smart. Now, if we deploy the phrase anything but, the expectation reverses. Therefore, he is not foolish. Look at this example here. Please pause the video and solve it. First thing first, we replace anything but here with simply not. That's how we will read this sentence. Expectedly, the editor has been replaced. For a long time, the newspaper's editorials have been not. See, the editor has been expectedly replaced, and therefore the editorials must have been bad, and therefore not good. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice is simply something like good here. A positive word, and therefore all the negative words should be eliminated. So, ordinary, unremarkable, gullible, these are all negative words. They should be eliminated. Abstract is a neutral word. It does not match with our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. The answer choice is noteworthy and distinguished. Positive words, very well matching our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. And moral of the story is that every time you see an anything but in the sentence, replace it with not. Let's try a variation of the same question with a contrast. Look at this question with the answer choices. Please pause the video and solve this. It's the same sentence with just one difference. Rather than expectedly in the last sentence, you have strangely here. So a shift in meaning. You also see an anything but here, which must be replaced by, guess what? That's correct, not. So now this becomes a sentence with double contrast. You have a contrast here, and then you have a contrast once again here. So strangely, the editor has been replaced. That means editor was doing a fine job. For a long time, the newspaper's editorials have been not. We want to say that the editor was doing a fine job. Therefore, his editorials must have been good and therefore not what? Bad. So now our broad expectation from the correct answer choice is something on the lines of bad. So now all the positive words should be eliminated. So noteworthy, distinguished must go. Abstract is a neutral word and it does not match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Gullible is a slightly negative word, but it does not match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Unremarkable and ordinary are not as negative as what we expected, but these words logically complete the sentence and lead to equivalent meaning that the editor has been strangely replaced while he was not doing an unremarkable or ordinary job, which means he was likely doing a remarkable or extraordinary job. Choices A and B are the correct answer choices. A word of caution here. Please don't confuse negative words or thoughts with contrast. Don't confuse negative words with contrasting words. Don't confuse negative thoughts with contrasting thoughts. Rather, please focus on whether there is a shift in meaning. It's not about negative or positive, good or bad. It is about whether there is a shift in meaning. Remember, shift is the key. For example, look at this sentence. He didn't study well, he didn't score well. There is no contrast here. A negative action and a negative consequence. There is no shift in meaning. Similarly, she stumbled, she hurt herself. Once again, a negative action and a negative consequence. Sad, but no contrast. Very important. Please understand, these two sentences do not feature a contrast because they do not feature a shift in meaning. Try these variations now. Here we see an although. So although something negative, that although he did not study well, he scored something on the lines of well. And in this case, despite studying well, so despite something positive, we see a shift in meaning here because of the word despite. He scored something negative, something like poorly. So a negative action or circumstance leading to a negative outcome, no contrast. Unfortunate, but this is not the case of a contrast. A negative action or circumstance leading to a positive outcome, yes, this is a case of contrast. A positive action or circumstance leading to a negative outcome, once again, yes, contrast. A positive action or circumstance leading to a positive outcome, no contrast. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is your question. Here is the correct four-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this. We see an although here, and then we see a no here, so double contrast. So as always, meaning becomes important that although the newspaper had accepted government funding, its reporters were no something, and what follows suggests that the reporters were doing their job without any bias. So our expectation from the correct answer choice should be something on the lines of biased. That although the newspaper had accepted government funding, its reporters were not biased, they did their job well. So critiques and opponents should be the first to go. They are opposite of what we are expecting. And if we had not noticed this word suggesting contrast, our expectation from the correct answer choice would in fact have been on the lines of critics and opponents. Remember, questions testing contrast very often feature an antonym pair. You see the correct pair here is going to be flatterers and adulators, and you have a pair of antonyms here so that students who are not able to process the contrast in the sentence and end up selecting these answer choices. Braggart means boastful. It is something else. This does not match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Connoisseurs means appreciators of some fine art. That does not fit the bill here. Choices B and F, flatterers and adulators, are then likely to be biased. These two answer choices complete the sentence coherently and lead to equivalent sentences. B and F are the correct answer choices. And moral of the story is that please understand the importance of such contrast triggers, although and no. Without duly processing these words, our broad expectation from the correct answer choice is not going to be correct. Contrast over time. Look at this example here. Earth's scattered land masses are slowly drifting back together. In a few million years, the surface of the planet will once again be dominated by a certain supercontinent. So, what is currently scattered is drifting back together. So, the planet will once again have something like a united supercontinent. Sentences involving contrast over time in meaning suggest a shift over time. Let's take some examples. Look at this one. Once considered impossible organ transplants are now something else, if still risky procedures. So, what was considered impossible continues to be risky, but they are now something on the lines of routine. So we see a shift over time in this sentence that organ transplants, once considered impossible, are now routine procedures. One more example. Henry was something to learn that a long time ago, this desert was a vast ocean. So once again, we see a shift over time. What is now a desert was once an ocean. And Henry must be something on the lines of bemused to learn that. One more example. David found it fascinating that so many certain languages can be traced to a common ancestor. So once again, we see a shift over time. What was earlier one language has derived into so many, something like distinct languages, and David finds this fascinating. Some contrast triggers suggesting a contrast or shift over time. Here are some simple words, some more. Remember, the use of present perfect tense marked by has or have along with a verb can very often suggest a shift in meaning on the lines of something has happened and therefore something contrasting may happen. You don't need to remember these triggers. These are only for your conceptual understanding. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is the question. Here is the correct four-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this. So, once one of the world's greatest centers of learning by a certain date, a certain city, found itself pushed to certain area of the world due to such and such reasons. The sentence features contrast over time, that what was once the world's greatest centers of learning found itself pushed to something like the boundaries of the Arabic speaking world due to such and such reasons. We understood the core meaning of the sentence. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice is on the lines of boundaries. Let us now go about eliminating. Through this word, boundaries, we are trying to suggest confinement, and therefore words such as center stage and spotlight are just not going to fit, nor would a word like preeminence. Chagrin means embarrassment that does not fit this context. Peripherals and fringe very well match our broad expectation, which is on the lines of boundaries. We can cross-check that what was once one of the world's greatest centers of learning by such and such year, the city found itself pushed to the peripherals or the fringe, both the words meaning on the lines of outer boundary of a certain part of the world due to such and such reasons. C and F are the correct answer choices. Contrast in perception or attitude. Look at this example here. Personal tastes of most celebrities are far more something than what people imagine. So we can sense a contrast in perception here. People are likely to associate celebrities with fancy personal tastes. However, this sentence suggests a contrast that in reality, the personal tastes of most celebrities are far more something on the lines of basic than what people imagine. A more GRE-like word here would be pedestrian. Contrast in perception or attitude in a sentence suggests a shift in perception or attitude about something. Let's take some examples. Look at this sentence. You can sense a contrast or shift in perception here that this person's writing, while often accused of being overly something, is in fact quite straightforward. So in reality, his writing is straightforward. Therefore, the perception must be something opposite. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice needs to be something on the lines of fancy. Let's take one more example. We can observe a contrast or shift in attitude here that the father was lenient with the younger sister, but something different towards the son. So we need an answer choice that is broadly in contrast with lenient. So our broad expectation from the correct answer choice needs to be something on the lines of strict. Let's take one more example. President's inability to predict something is two things. It is an unfortunate but some oversight to his supporters, but to his detractors, it is something very, very serious. So we see a very clear contrast or shift in attitude here. The attitude of his supporters for the same inability is very lenient, but the attitude of his detractors for the same inability is something so intense. We see a non-condolable attitude here. So in this blank, we need something in contrast. Non-condolable means non-forgivable. Therefore, in this blank, we need an answer choice broadly on the lines of forgivable. Some triggers for contrast in perception or attitude. Virtually all the contrast triggers work for contrast in perception or attitude. Remember this slide from one of the earlier lessons. This enlists a vast list of contrast triggers. Please don't worry about this list of triggers. The list is here just for your conceptual understanding. Please simply gain the conceptual understanding and apply it. On that note, let's take a GRE-like example. Here is the question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this question. The Bermuda Triangle is infamous for the high number of shipwrecks, but so we see a contrast, a shift here. The number of ships that have sunk in this area is something to that of any other region that is similar. So we see a contrast in perception here that the Bermuda Triangle is infamous for a higher number of accidents, but in reality, the number is something on the lines of equivalent to that of any other similar region. So with that broad expectation, let's look at the answer choices. An answer choice like disproportionate or inordinate is exactly the opposite of what we are expecting. Antithetical means in sharp contrast, and therefore this is also opposite of what we are expecting. Prescient means knowing beforehand. That just does not fit the context here. It does not match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. choices commensurate and comparable are quite on the lines of equivalent. These are the correct answer choices. Contrast from usual. Look at this sentence. You can sense a contrast from usual here, in that this person, normally a certain way, grows irate if he is accused falsely. So on being accused falsely, this person grows irate. That means normally he must be something in contrast to irate. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice must be something on the lines of calm. A GRE-like word for calm is placid. In a sentence, contrast from usual suggests a shift from the norm. Let's take some examples. Look at this sentence. You can sense a shift from the norm here, in that mongooses are not usually aggressive, but so a contrast trigger here will relentlessly something any snake they come across. So the norm is that mongooses are not aggressive, and the shift from the norm is when they come across snake. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice needs to be something in contrast with not aggressive. And therefore, our broad expectation from the correct answer choice needs to be something on the lines of fight. Mongooses will relentlessly fight any snake they come across. A GRE-like word for fight, antagonize. Let's take one more example. So this person is typically garrulous, as in talkative. So when she did not contact her friends over the weekend, the friends must have been what? They must have been something on the lines of surprised. A GRE-like word for surprised, startled. The contrast from usual triggers. Most contrast triggers work very well for contrast from usual. Remember this slide from one of the earlier lessons. All the contrast triggers mentioned here apply, and here are some more triggers. Please don't worry about this big list of triggers. The list is here just to help you gain the conceptual understanding. Please just understand the concept and move on, practice. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is the question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this. So this person was known for her penchant for perfection, and therefore her colleagues were surprised. So this is a contrast trigger here, surprised, when she suggested that they do something using the existing framework for their upcoming project. So generally she is known for her perfection, but in this situation she has suggested something that has surprised her colleagues. So she seems to have done something which is in contrast to perfection. Our broad expectation from the correct answer choice can be something on the lines of make do. Excel is just the opposite of what we are looking for. Instigate and invigorate have meanings on the lines of inspire, which does not match our expectation from the correct answer choice. These two should be eliminated. Prevaricate means to avoid, that does not fit here. Choices improvise and extemporize mean on the lines of make do, and therefore B and C are the correct answer choices. Sometimes the blank itself may be a contrast trigger. For example, look at this sentence. Please pause the video and try solving it. That the amateurs have been found to perform what seasoned skateboarders cannot is something surprising. Therefore, the blank here is a contrast trigger. Sometimes on the GRE, the given sentence lacks a contrast trigger, but the meaning clearly conveys a shift. In such cases, the blank is likely a contrast trigger. The key to solving such sentences lies in duly understanding the meaning. Therefore, always spot any shift in meaning and arrive at your broad expectation from the correct answer choice accordingly. Let's take one more example. Please pause the video and come up with your broad expectation for the blank. The construction has been forced to halt, and the builders have been anything but lax. That means that the builders have been sincere in adhering to safety codes. So the construction has been halted despite the builders being sincere with the safety protocols. Therefore, we need a contrast trigger here on the blank, a word on the lines of unnecessarily. So please remember the key point. Sometimes on the GRE, the blank may be a contrast trigger. Let us now take a GRE-like example. Please pause the video and try solving this. This phrase here involves multiple contrasts. Effectively, it simply means impressed. So the management was impressed by the freelancers' contributions, and the management still chose not to consider the freelancers' request for a permanent position. We see a clear contrast here. The core meaning is that despite being impressed by the freelancer, the management did not consider the freelancer's request for a permanent position. Therefore, quite clearly in the blank, we need a contrast trigger, a word on the lines of unexpectedly. That's our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Choices A, B, C, and E are nowhere close, while choices D and F are quite on the lines of our broad expectation. And when these choices are inserted in the blank, we get two coherent sentences with equivalent meanings. Therefore, D and F are the correct answer choices here. And the moral of the story is that sometimes the blank may be a contrast trigger. Beware of superficial contrasts. Look at this example and the two answer choices. Only one of the two answer choices is correct. You see a contrasting phrase here. However, when you see deeply, you will realize that this contrasting phrase has no role to play in the meaning of this sentence. So something is happening to the distinction held by this county. Either the distinction is being lost or it is being sustained. And the key to solving this question lies in actually this part of the sentence, after holding the status for many years, which means that this county no longer holds this status. And that means the distinction has been lost. And see, all of this had nothing to do with this contrasting phrase. It is here only to confuse you. Moral of the story, please beware of superficial contrasts. Contrast triggers do not necessarily induce contrast every time. Beware of superficial contrast, or in simple words, false contrast. Read the sentences closely and carefully, understand the meaning, and duly observe any shift in meaning, or in this case, very often, the lack of the shift in meaning. Look at this example and these two answer choices. Only one of them is correct. Please solve it. This long phrase here, full of contrasting or negative words, can be confusing. However, the meaning is that despite all these issues, the court effectuated an accurate judgment on the case. Let's take one more example. Look at these two answer choices. Only one of them is correct. Please solve this. Once again, this contrasting phrase here can be confusing, particularly with the word though here. However, once again, this phrase is only a trap. The core meaning is that the cuisine has acquired prominence in the culinary word map despite these issues. So this contrasting term here does not lead to a negative outcome. The idea, as always, is to focus on meaning. Remember, meaning is the key. Shortcuts or tricks don't lead to high scores, concepts and comprehension do. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is the question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this question. You see two contrasting phrases here. This is one contrasting phrase, and then one more contrasting phrase here. This second phrase here has no active role to play in the sentence. It is here only to add to the complexity of the sentence. The core meaning is that this person is considered one of the something on the lines of really good political writers of the early 20th century. And all of this is despite this aberration here. So our broad expectation from the correct answer choice needs to be something on the lines of best, one of the best political writers of the early 20th century. So all the answer choices which have a negative meaning can be very comfortably eliminated. Obscure, meaning abstract or difficult to understand, does not fit this context, nor does it match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Prophetic has a meaning on the lines of foretelling. This too does not fit the context and it does not match our broad expectation from the correct answer choice. Let's look at the remaining answer choices. C and F. The meaning turns out that despite this aberration, this person is considered one of the foremost or predominant. Our broad expectation was on the lines of best. So this person is considered one of the foremost or predominant, or in simple words, one of the best political writers of the early 20th century. Choices C and F are the correct choices. And remember the key point that on the test, we must be careful about superficial contrast. Good luck with applying this concept in practice. Sentences involving multiple contrasts in meaning. Look at this example here and look at the two options. Please pause the video and solve it. You will notice multiple contrast triggers here. Although is a contrast trigger, it suggests a shift in meaning. Then you see did not, another contrast trigger, so a shift. And then you see a fail, so a shift yet again. Such a short sentence, but you see three shifts in meaning here. It is crucial to process each contrast trigger, each shift carefully to get this right and therefore shift in meaning carefully. Let's process this second part first. Did not fail to see means what? It means that the investor saw the potential. So you see two negative words here, did not and fail, kind of cancel each other, and the meaning turns out that the investor saw the potential of the proposal. So the second half of the sentence is something positive, and therefore the first half of the sentence here must have a positive meaning. But then once again we have a negative word here, although, so something negative must come here, that although something negative, the investor saw the potential. You see, a negative word here together with a negative word here would cancel the negative meaning, just the way a negative phrase here did not together with another negative word here fail cancelled the negative meaning. So we need a negative word for the blank. Impressed can be eliminated. Unimpressed is the correct answer choice. That although unimpressed, the investor still saw the potential of the proposal. First, let's look at the case of double contrast, which means two shifts in meaning. As we are aware, contrast suggests a shift in meaning. Therefore, double contrast suggests two such shifts. Look at this example. You have a contrast trigger here and then one more contrast trigger here. So ideally, if Rose did not study much, she must have performed poorly, but we have an although here which suggests a contrast and therefore a positive word must come in the blank. She performed something on the lines of well, that despite not studying much for the test, Rose performed well. Let's look at one more example. Now here you see a shift here, did not, so one more shift here, and then once again, did not. So we have a negative word here, a negative word here, and negative word here. Three negatives would lead to something negative. Here, see, negative and negative led to something positive. In this case, negative, negative, negative would lead to something negative. So although Rose did not study much for the test, she did not perform poorly. Processing each contrast trigger carefully is the key in all such sentences. If you miss any contrast trigger, you will end up selecting an answer choice that means just the opposite of the correct answer choice. So please process each contrast trigger, each shift in meaning carefully. That's the key. Here is our regular list of contrast triggers. Please notice you don't have to remember the list of triggers. The list is here just for your conceptual understanding. The key point is to notice each such contrast trigger in a sentence or paragraph and duly process the shift in meaning. Let's now look at the case of more than two contrasts in a sentence. GRE sentences can often have multiple contrasts and therefore multiple shifts in meaning. Please be careful about noticing and processing every shift trigger that you see in a sentence. Look at this question. Please pause the video and solve it. Please notice the shift triggers. We have although here, then did not once again. So 3 shifts, negative, negative, and negative. So overall, the result is something negative. So the positive words should be very comfortably eliminated. Misconstrue and innovate do not fit the context. Fail to impress and disappoint form the correct pair. In simple words, the meaning is that although Jack did not perform well, or in simple words, although Jack performed poorly, he did not disappoint in the knockout stage. Therefore, although Jack performed poorly in the league stage, he performed well in the knockout stage. Please notice even the answer choices have a shift trigger each. Fail to impress has a shift in it, and disappoint itself is a negative word. So overall, this example includes 1, 2, 3, and 4 shifts in meaning. Very, very interesting. Remember, the key simply lies in noticing and duly processing each contrast trigger and therefore the underlying shift in meaning. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is the question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this question. Seemingly eternal and unchangeable systems are not so. And what follows is an example of the same. We expect an example of systems not being eternal and unchangeable. Therefore, in the example, we are expecting change. Monarchies once dominated the world, but such rule is now scarcely something. We are clear about the meaning that we want, that monarchies were earlier popular, but now they are not. What makes the question tricky here is the usage of these shift triggers, but and scarcely. We want to say that but the rule of kings is now rare, but the term scarcely has already come in here, therefore a shift has come. So now scarcely something has to represent rare. Therefore in the blank we need a word that means just the opposite. So something like significant, that the rule of kings is now rarely significant. Answer choices D and C mean quite the opposite. If we did not do a fine job at processing the shifts in the meaning, we may end up selecting these answer choices, while these should be the first to be eliminated. Portentous, meaning overblown, is a trap here. While this is borderline correct, it does not have a partner answer choice, so this can be eliminated. Same with menacing. While this is borderline correct, it does not have a partner answer choice. Unavoidable and inescapable are quite logical. They complete the sentence and lead to sentences with equivalent meaning. Although these are a bit far from our broad expectation from the correct answer choice, they very well fit the bill. B and E are the correct answer choices. If you got this one right, very good job. Use of multiple negative words in a sentence can be tricky, and this is a concept frequently tested on the GRE. For example, look at this sentence here. There are 2 answer choices. One of them is correct. Please pause the video and solve this. In all, this sentence has 4 shift triggers: though, not again, and then rarely. The correct approach would be to understand the underlying meaning of the sentence while duly spotting and processing each shift trigger. So, though Sarah is not lactose intolerant, because of this reason here, she rarely consumes or avoids milk products. This part between the two commas is just extra information. You can very well ignore this part of the sentence. This is simply explaining the reason why this happens. The core meaning is that though Sarah is not lactose intolerant, she rarely something. Now let's navigate each of the negative word carefully. Sarah is not lactose intolerant, so we would expect Sarah to consume milk products. But then we see a though here, which means that the meaning is otherwise. That despite being not lactose intolerant, she does not consume milk products. So we expect the last part of the sentence to suggest that she avoids milk products. So we would want the sentence to suggest that Sarah eschews milk products. But we have a rarely here, so we want to say that she eschews milk products. Because of this rarely here, we would now say she rarely consumes milk products. Rarely consumes is similar to avoids or eschews. So consumes is the correct answer choice here. And the key learning from the slide is that we must spot each contrast trigger carefully, and when there are multiple negative words involved, we must be very, very careful. Otherwise, we will end up selecting an answer choice that means opposite of what we must select. Let us particularly understand the usage of double negatives. As we are aware, we must beware of the usage of no or not in a sentence along with all its variations, because usage of a no, not or a negative word in a sentence leads to a negative shift in the meaning. At the same time, usage of two negative words or double negatives negates the negative shift and therefore leads to a positive or affirmative meaning. For example, intelligent is a positive word. If we add a not to it, a negative word, not intelligent becomes negative. However, if we make intelligent also a negative word and thereby change the phrase not intelligent to not unintelligent, now you see this is double negatives. This has a positive or affirmative meaning. Let's take one example. Here is a question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this. This sentence reflects a cause-effect relationship. The first half of the sentence represents the cause and the second half represents the effect. So because of this cause, this effect happens. Therefore, we want to convey something on the lines that because Genghis Khan was discontented with or dissatisfied with securing his rule over the Mongol heartland, he went on to establish the largest empire in history. So we want to say that Genghis Khan was dissatisfied, but we have a not here. So now to convey dissatisfied, we must say not satisfied. So although answer choices A and B have our desired keyword discontented and dissatisfied, because of this not here, A and B should be eliminated, and rather choices meaning the opposite of dissatisfied, satiated, fulfilled become the correct answer choice. So not discontented would lead to a double negative. It would mean contented. So we must avoid the case of double negatives leading to a positive word. So these two choices should be eliminated. Not fulfilled, not satiated, in turn suggests dissatisfied, the meaning that we need. Choices D and E are the correct answer choices. And the key learning here is that we must spot every negative word in a sentence carefully and process the shift in meaning it brings along. A GRE sentence may very often contain multiple negative words. Let's take a GRE-like example now. Here is the question. Here is the correct 4-step approach. Please pause the video and solve this. To begin with, you see a double negative right here. Not inconsiderate simply means considerate. Two negative words coming together to convey a positive or moderate message. So this phrase, not inconsiderate, practically means considerate. So the professor is considerate towards his students, but. So we are expecting a shift in meaning here. Whatever follows needs to be something which is in contrast with considerate. You see one more double negative here. Never fails means always does. So he always lets go tact in favor of a certain type of critique. So he is letting go tact in favor of a certain type of critique, which is supposed to be not very considerate because of this but here. So we know it's a negative word here because the nature of critique here is inconsiderate. So choices such as equivocal, roundabout should be eliminated. These are rather tactful choices, which is not tactful. All the remaining four answer choices are negative answer choices. These two form a synonym pair and these two form a synonym pair. This is tricky. All four answer choices can be considered inconsiderate. However, what is in direct contrast with tact? If you are letting go tact, what are you becoming? You are becoming frank. And therefore, direct and frank form the correct pair of answer choices. It's a difficult question. The answer choices are very close. Even if you chose E and F, I am not too bothered as long as you succeeded in eliminating choices A and B by duly navigating the multiple negatives involved in the sentence. So this was the concept, friends. In case you are not feeling in control as yet, don't worry. What follows are some rigorous drills on contrast, multiple contrasts, negatives, multiple negatives. The drills will really help you hone the concept. Right now, just focus on the key point that we must be able to spot every contrast trigger and process the shift in meaning that such triggers bring along. A drill on sentences involving contrast, low complexity. Please target 100% accuracy and don't worry about speed at this stage. A quick recap. Contrast suggests a shift in meaning. Here is an exhaustive list of contrast triggers. You don't need to remember the triggers. The list is here just for your conceptual understanding. The key lies in identifying each such contrast trigger and duly processing the shift in meaning that such triggers bring. Here is the drill. On this slide, you will find 5 sentences with 2 answer choices each for the underlined part. You need to select one of the 2 underlined answer choices. Please pause the video and attempt all 5 while targeting 100% accuracy. Canines and primates have evolved to live in packs. And then we see a but here, so we can expect a contrast. Therefore, felines must not like living in packs. That means felines aren't sociable. See, we want to convey that felines are unsociable, but because we have a negative word here, we must select sociable. So felines are unsociable or felines aren't sociable. Sociable is the correct answer choice here. Whenever the blank appears very early in the sentence, the catch generally lies in the later part of the sentence. It's mentioned that the vaccine conferred only resistance but not immunity. Therefore, this vaccine is doing only a limited job. It is offering only resistance, but it is not offering immunity. Therefore, this piece of information must be contrary to the popular perception. Therefore, contrary is the correct answer choice here. Roy fared brilliantly, but this was a surprise. That means Roy was not expected to fare well. That means Roy is a novice. But we have another shift trigger here, hardly. Therefore, an expert must be chosen. Hardly an expert means Roy is a novice. Had this word hardly not been here, novice would have been the correct answer choice. That is why noticing and processing every contrast trigger is so important. An expert is the correct answer choice here. This sentence features only one contrast trigger. Anything but simply means not at all. And what Andrew Carnegie is doing is philanthropy. That means he must not at all be a miser. That's the correct answer choice here. The minister here is not a flatterer. Therefore, he is likely to critique the king. We need likely, therefore, not hesitate is going to be the correct answer choice. So these are the 5 correct answers. I hope you got all 5 correct. If not, don't worry. Just grab your learning and move on. A medium complexity drill on sentences involving contrast. Please target 100% accuracy and don't worry about speed at this stage. Here is the drill. On this slide, you have 5 sentences, and for the underlined parts, you have 2 answer choices. You need to select one of the 2 underlined answer choices. Please pause the video and solve it while targeting 100% accuracy. The question here is whether this person contributed as much to Cubism as Picasso did. The context is that the acknowledgement is rare, and then there is a shift trigger here suggesting that this rare acknowledgement is likely not correct. And therefore, he must have contributed as much as Picasso did. The broader message is that though the acknowledgement is rare except by a certain group, this person contributed as much to Cubism as Picasso did. The question is whether steam power was popular or unknown to the scientists prior to the 1800s. Please note these shift triggers here. There is a but here and there is a not here. So the following part of the sentence here suggests something which is in contrast with the information in the first part of the sentence. The second part suggests that the scientists lacked the materials needed to put their knowledge to practical use. So the second part talks about something that they lacked because of which they could not put their knowledge to practical use. And therefore, the first half of the sentence must suggest that they had the knowledge. However, please don't be quick to select popular here. Please note this not here. We want to say popular, but we have a not here, so we need to select the other answer choice, unknown, suggesting that steam power was not unknown and therefore popular among scientists in this age, but these scientists lacked the materials needed to put their theoretical knowledge into practical use. In the third example, the question is whether lesser or greater regulations lead to a less uncompetitive market. First of all, please understand less uncompetitive. 2 negative words suggest a positive meaning, competitive. So what would make the market more competitive is what we want to determine. The last part of the sentence suggests that anti-monopoly laws are counterproductive. So such laws and therefore regulations are not helping, and therefore these adherents must be asserting that lesser regulations lead to a competitive market for any commodity. In the fourth sentence, we need to determine whether this person rarely embraces or avoids arguments. Here we see a contrast, nevertheless, and therefore this time he acted differently from how he generally acts. This time he did not offer his opinion. That means this time he avoided an argument. That means generally he embraces an argument. So we want to say through this part here that he generally embraces an argument, but see we have a rarely here. Therefore, if we want to say embrace, we must choose avoid. Rarely one to avoid an argument, which means generally one to embrace an argument. A very, very interesting sentence here. Multiple shift triggers. Rarely, then avoid is a negative word. Nevertheless, one more shift. Not to offer. We have 4 shifts in one sentence here. If you missed any, you would end up choosing the wrong answer choice. The correct answer choice is avoid. Look at the last sentence here. It's a continuation of thought expressed here that satire need not be vicious, and what follows is an example of the same. Many celebrated works in the genre have mocked, that means satired, their subjects gently and therefore not viciously. What do you think should come here? While or without disrespecting them? This sentence is about being gentle, being non-vicious in satire or mockery, and therefore it should talk about mocking without disrespecting. Second answer choice is correct here. These are the 5 correct answer choices for this drill. I hope you got all 5 correct. If not, please analyze properly and attempt this drill once again. The next drill is going to be higher in complexity. A drill on sentences involving contrast, high complexity. Please target 100% accuracy and don't worry about speed at this stage. Here is the drill. On this slide, you will see 5 sentences with 2 options for the underlined part. You need to select one of the 2 underlined answer choices for each of the 5 sentences here. In the first sentence, we need to figure out whether this monarch in question considered or ignored modernizing the institution of monarchy. So he was an absolute monarch, though not a traditionalist one. So he was different in some ways. And this part of the sentence explains that in what way he was different from traditionalist monarchs. In that, he worked towards rapidly modernizing his geography, but he never did something else. So this part of the sentence here explains the way in which he was different from the traditional monarchs, and the later part of the sentence shows a contrast. This starts with a but here. And therefore, this last part of the sentence needs to be in contrast to the previous part of the sentence. So he modernized his geography, but when it came to modernizing the institution of monarchy, he never considered it. That must be the intended meaning. That when it came to the idea of modernizing the institution of monarchy, he behaved like an absolute monarch and he never considered modernizing the institution. Let's look at the second question now. The public's primary concern was how these conditions, as in the harsh conditions talked about in earlier part of the sentence, affected the sanitation of their food and not the well-being of the workers. So the primary concern was how the sanitary conditions affected their food and not the condition of the workers. And therefore, the concern raised in the first part of the sentence here suggests a secondary concern of sorts. So it's not that the public was not unaffected by the harsh conditions endured by the workers. The public was affected. It's just that the public's primary concern was something else. So the first part of the sentence wants to say that the public was affected. Since we have a shift here, a not, we need to select unaffected. The public was not unaffected, and therefore the public was affected by the depiction of harsh conditions endured by the employees, but the public's primary concern was something else. That is the intended meaning. Unaffected is the correct answer choice here. The third sentence can be broken into 2 parts. The first part here suggests an observation, and the second part suggests the effect of the observation made in the first half. The first half suggests that the vivid and lively style that Vincent van Gogh developed was after he received the treatment, in effect stabilizing his emotional state. So the treatment stabilized his emotional state and he developed a vivid and lively style. Once this part is clear, the second part of the sentence becomes fairly straightforward. The less turbulent his moods grew. Now, after the treatment, his mood stabilized and therefore his moods grew less turbulent and therefore he developed vivid and lively style. So what follows here needs to suggest a vivid and lively style. So as his moods grew less turbulent, his style must have become passionate. But see, we have a shift here, less. We want to say passionate. We have a less here, so we will say less subdued, because less subdued is quite on the lines of passionate. Subdued is the correct answer choice here. In the fourth sentence, we need to figure out whether Rosamund was a proficient or an amateur thespian, in simple words, actor. So he was quite capable of serving as a last minute replacement. So he was only a replacement, and there is also a shift in meaning here. That means his taking up a last minute role was a backup option of sorts. In simple words, this entire part of the sentence suggests that Rosamund was a decent enough actor to act as a last-minute replacement. And this is a surprise of sorts because of this usage. Nevertheless, that means he is not supposed to be a proficient thespian, but he was nevertheless able to act as a last-minute replacement. So we want to say that he was only an amateur thespian, but because of this not here, we will not choose amateur, we will choose proficient. This is the correct answer choice. The meaning turns out that not a proficient actor, Rosamund was nevertheless quite capable of serving as a last-minute replacement under such and such circumstances. The fifth sentence here is very, very similar to the second sentence. If you got the second question incorrect, please pause the video and solve the fifth one again. I will very quickly attempt this. So the meaning is that America was supportive of the colony's desire for independence. It's just that America's primary motivation was something else. So we want to say that America was supportive, but we have a not here, so we'll have to say not unsupportive. The meaning turns out that America was not unsupportive of the South American colonies' desire for independence from Spain and Portugal, but the primary motivation was something else. So not unsupportive is the correct usage here, just as what we had in the second question here, that the public was not unaffected. The sentence wanted to say that public was affected by the harsh conditions endured by the employees, but the public's primary concern was something else. Similarly, America was not unsupportive of the cause, but its primary motivation was something else. So these are the 5 correct answers here. If you got all 5 correct, a brilliant job. Even if you got 3 or 4 correct, a very good job. Remember, being able to navigate such contrasts, such shift in meaning is quite at the core of solving the GRE's sentence equivalence and text completion questions. Please work towards developing this skill of spotting all such contrast triggers and processing the shift in meaning that they bring along.